Welcome back to Tale of Wonder. The first time Rhys the Rhino Jackson truly understood fear, it wasn't from a punch he took. It was from an 80-year-old man who simply refused to fight back. Rhys Jackson wasn't just a fighter, he was a brand. At 26 years old, he was 240 pounds of sculpted rage, a walking, talking marketing campaign for energy drinks and high-performance protein powder. His gym, the Rhino's Den, was less a dojo and more a content creation studio. All exposed brick, neon signs, and chrome-plated machines. His entire life was a performance, filmed in 4,000 and uploaded for his 3 million followers. He trained in explosive 30-second clips. He ate his 9,000-calorie meals on camera. He knocked out sparring partners with a grin, adding a slow-motion replay before asking his audience to smash that like button. Rhys was the present. He was loud, he was fast, and he was rich. Mr. Y was the past. He was quiet, he was slow, and he was just old. Mr. Y taught Tai Chi every morning at 6 a.m. in the Willow Creek Park, not far from the Rhino's Den. He didn't have followers. He had students. About 6 of them. Their average age was 75. They didn't have high-performance gear. They had loose-fitting cotton pants and worn-out slippers. They didn't smash anything. They moved, as one, with the glacial, deliberate pace of clouds drifting across the sky. Mr. Y himself was a paradox. He was tiny, perhaps 120 pounds soaking wet. His back was permanently stooped from a lifetime of something. His hands were a roadmap of thin, papery veins, yet his eyes were sharp. They were clear, dark, and unsettlingly still. They didn't just look at you. They seemed to be listening to the air around you. The collision of these two worlds was inevitable. It was set in motion by Rhys's manager, a woman named Gina, who was even more addicted to social media metrics than Rhys was. "We need new content, Rhys," she'd said, scrolling through her tablet. "The smashing tires with a sledgehammer bit is played out. Brutal sparring is getting stale. We need a narrative." What narrative? Rhys had grunted, midway through a set of deafening clean and jerks. Angry millennial versus boomer, new school versus old school. You know, conflict. She showed him a video that was making the rounds on a rival's feed. It featured a muscular athlete debunking a traditional martial arts master. It was clumsy, disrespectful, and, to Gina's delight, had 10 million views. "This," she said, tapping the screen, "is gold. It's funny, it's controversial, it gets engagement. And I know just the place." The next morning, Rhys Jackson, followed by his cameraman, Kyle, swaggered into Willow Creek Park. The sun was just peeking through the fog, casting long, dramatic shadows from the willow trees. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth. Mr. Y and his 6 students were already there, moving through their forms. Their hands rose and fell like gentle waves. Rhys switched on his persona. The chest puffed out. The voice dropped an octave. The trademark sneer locked into place. "All right, Kyle, we're live," he announced, his voice booming across the quiet green. The Tai Chi practitioners stopped. Their serene bubble had been burst. Rhys stomped over to them, his heavy combat boots crushing the morning dew on the grass. He got right in Mr. Y's face, phone held high like a weapon. "So this is it, huh? This is the ancient secret? You guys look like you're trying to swim through invisible peanut butter. What is this, Grandpa? A dance class for people who forgot their dance moves?" His followers watching the live stream loved it. The comments poured in. "Get him, Rhino. LOL, this old dude is a fraud. That's not a martial art, that's a nap." Mr. Y just watched him. He didn't get angry. He didn't get scared. He just tilted his head, his dark eyes taking in the spectacle. Rhys, fueled by the lack of a reaction, got more aggressive. He turned to one of the other students, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chun. "Come on, love. Show me your deadliest move, Rhys laughed. He faked a lunge, and the woman flinched, stumbling backward. That's when Mr. Y finally moved. He didn't step forward. He just shifted. He was suddenly between Rhys and Mrs. Chun. He hadn't moved fast, but he was just there. He spoke. His voice was not frail. It was soft, but it carried, like a pebble dropped into a deep well. That is enough, Rhys laughed, a loud, barking sound. Enough? I'm just getting started. You're going to stop me with your slow-motion voodoo? Mr. Y looked at Rhys. He looked at his bulging, tense shoulders. He looked at his clenched fists. He looked at his feet, planted wide in an aggressive, unstable stance. And then Mr. Y smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile of profound, almost sad, understanding, as if he were looking at a toddler throwing a tantrum. This was what broke Rhys. He could handle fear. He could handle anger. He fed on it. But he could not, under any circumstances, handle being pitied. You think this is funny? Rhys roared, his face turning a dark shade of crimson. You think you're some kind of secret master, don't you? All right, let's find out. He jabbed a thick finger at Mr. Y's chest. You and me, in a ring. I'm gonna debunk you so hard, you'll be feeling it in your next life. What do you say, master? You got the guts? The camera was tight on Mr. Y's face. The live stream chat exploded. This was the content Gina had dreamed of. Mr. Y was silent for a long moment. He looked at his students, who seemed worried. He looked at Rhys, vibrating with manufactured rage. A fight, Mr. Y said, testing the word, is a very loud conversation. And you seem to be a very loud young man. Is that a yes or a no? Rhys demanded. I will, Mr. Y said, nodding slowly. On one condition. Rhys's eyes widened. This was perfect. Yeah? What? You want money? A new set of pajamas? No, Mr. Y said. We will have your fight. 1 round. 5 minutes. We will do it in your den. But when you lose. Rhys let out a bark of laughter. When I lose? Old man, I'm going to tap you on the chin and you'll turn to dust. Mr. Y continued, as if Rhys hadn't spoken. When you find you cannot win, you will come here, to this park, and you will be my student. For 1 week, 7 days. You will do as I do. No cameras, no noise. Rhys was stunned. He looked at Kyle. He looked back at Mr. Y. This was better than he could have imagined. The audacity. The old man was writing the script for him. You got a deal, master, Rhys sneered. Next Friday, my gym, be there, and bring a pillow. You're gonna need it for your nap. He and Kyle stalked off, laughing triumphantly. As they left, Mrs. Chun touched Mr. Y's arm. Master Y, that man, he is a professional fighter. He is a rhino. He will hurt you. Mr. Y watched Rhys's retreating, muscle-bound back. He sighed, a soft sound of wind through pines. He is already hurt, Su Lin, he said softly. That is the problem. He is all stuck, like a rusty hinge. He thinks he is an iron bar, but he is just brittle, very brittle. He needs an adjustment. The next 10 days were a blur of chaotic, masterful marketing. Gina went into overdrive. The event was billed as the Rhino versus the Dragon, the ultimate showdown of style. The posters were laughably mismatched. On one side, Rhys, screaming, veins popping, wrapped in chains. On the other, a grainy, slightly out-of-focus photo of Mr. Y, squinting slightly in the park. The internet, predictably, lost its mind. The entire MMA community, and every traditional martial arts hater on the planet, championed Rhys. The comments were brutal. Rhino is going to commit elder abuse, and I'm here for it. 10 seconds. That's my bet. The old man shatters. This is why TMA is a joke. A smaller, quieter corner of the internet championed Mr. Y. They were the Tai Chi practitioners, the Qigong masters, the philosophers. The tree that does not bend breaks. An empty cup cannot be filled. That old man is a trap. Rhys is walking right into it. Rhys, for his part, trained by laughing. He posted videos of himself punching a heavy bag with a printed-out picture of Mr. Y's face on it, obliterating it in a single strike. He filmed himself doing Tai Chi, which consisted of him waving his arms around limply and then falling over, pretending to be asleep. He was having the time of his life. He was a hero. He was the defender of real martial arts, a crusader against the frauds and the phonies. Gina sold out the Rhino's den in 20 minutes. They set up pay-per-view. Sponsors, who had been wary of Rhys's usual antics, loved this. It was spectacle. It was drama. It was, in a word, content. The only person who seemed unfazed was Mr. Y. He didn't have a social media account. He didn't own a computer. He continued to show up at the park at 6 a.m. He continued to teach his 6 students. When nosy local news crews tried to interview him, he would just smile politely and say, "I am late. I must practice." He practiced standing still. He practiced breathing. Rhys practiced killing. The night of the fight arrived. The Rhino's den was transformed. It was packed to the rafters. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, energy drinks, and cheap cologne. A local DJ was blasting abrasive electronic music. Spotlights swept the crowd. Rhys made his entrance. It was pure theater. Smoke machines, a screaming entrance theme, pyrotechnics. He burst through a paper banner, shadowboxed his way to the octagon, set up in the center, and roared at the crowd, who roared back. He was wearing his sponsor-laden shorts, his gloves, his mouthpiece. He was oiled, taped, and ready for war. Then it was time for Mr. Y's entrance. The music cut. The crowd hushed, a mix of mockery and anticipation. The side door opened, and Mr. Y walked out. He wasn't wearing robes. He wasn't wearing a silk uniform. He was wearing a simple, short-sleeved, button-down shirt, beige-colored slacks pulled up a little too high, and a pair of simple black cloth slippers, the kind you buy at a convenience store for $5. He was followed by Mrs. Chun, who was carrying a small wooden stool and a thermos. The crowd was silent for a beat. Then the laughter started. It wasn't a cheer. It was a howl. A deafening, cruel, unified roar of ridicule. People were pointing, filming, crying with laughter. Rhys, in the ring, doubled over, slapping his knee. He brought his grandma. He yelled at the ringside camera. "And a thermos. Is it tea time, Pops?" Mr. Y, seemingly unfazed by the wall of noise, walked calmly to the ring. He couldn't climb the steps. He was too old. Mrs. Chun had to push his stool over, and he used it as a step to get through the ropes. He walked to his corner, where Mrs. Chun wordlessly poured him a small cup of tea from the thermos, which he sipped. The referee, a professional official Gina had paid handsomely, looked utterly bewildered. "Sir, Master Y," the ref said, leaning in. "Where is your, gear? Your gloves? A mouthpiece?" Mr. Y finished his sip of tea, handed the cup back to Mrs. Chun, and looked at the ref. "I do not intend to hit him," he said, his voice perfectly calm. "And I do not intend to be hit." The ref just stared, then sighed and shook his head. "All right, whatever. Your funeral." He called them to the center of the ring. Rhys bounced on his toes, vibrating with adrenaline and amusement. He was massive next to the old man. It was a grizzly bear next to a fawn. "You know the rules," the ref said, mostly to Rhys. 1 5-minute round. No illegal strikes. Protect yourselves at all times. Touch gloves. Rhys held up his 10-ounce gloves. Mr. Y just looked at them. Rhys snorted. Right, right, no touchy, and bounced back to his corner. The crowd was chanting. 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Mr. Y simply stood in his corner, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. He looked, bored. The bell rang. Clang! Rhys exploded from his corner. He was a missile. He launched a high-speed, piston-like jab aimed directly at Mr. Y's face. This was his tester punch, a punch that had rattled the teeth of 250-pound heavyweights. And it hit air. Mr. Y hadn't ducked. He hadn't blocked. He had taken one tiny half-step to his left. He had shifted his weight. Rhys's glove and his entire 240-pound frame rocketed past Mr. Y's right ear. The momentum was so great that Rhys stumbled. He had to catch himself on the ropes. The crowd's laughter faltered. Rhys growled. Lucky? He spat. He turned and threw a spinning back fist, a move that looked great on his highlight reels. Mr. Y wasn't there. He hadn't ducked under it. He had stepped inside it. He was now standing behind Rhys. He hadn't moved fast. He had just anticipated. Rhys's fist spun wildly through empty space. He was off balance again. He whirled around, his face no longer amused. Stand still and fight me, you old coward, he screamed. I am not running, Mr. Y said. He was standing perfectly still, not 3 feet away. His hands were still clasped behind his back. Rhys lunged. He unleashed the Rhino Rampage, a blizzard of hooks and overhands, a whirlwind of raw, brutal power designed to overwhelm and destroy. What the crowd saw was a man fighting a ghost. Mr. Y flowed. He wasn't blocking. He wasn't striking. He was just yielding. When Rhys threw a right hook, Mr. Y didn't raise his arms. He sank his body. The punch whistled over his head. When Rhys threw an uppercut, Mr. Y didn't lean back. He rotated. His whole body turned like a revolving door, and the punch slid harmlessly off his shoulder. With every strike Rhys threw, Mr. Y would make the smallest, most economical movement possible. A shift of the hip, a turn of the waist, a dip of the knee. He was absorbing nothing. He was redirecting everything. He made Rhys's power irrelevant. Rhys was pouring sweat. His lungs were burning. He was a power lifter, an explosive athlete. He was not a marathon runner. He was gassing himself out, punching holes in the air. He's just evading. Gina screamed from ringside, her face pale. No, whispered a man standing behind her. He was a retired boxer, a friend of the gym owner. Look closer. Rhys, in a blind panic, shot in for a takedown. He was a decent wrestler. He'd grab this old man, dump him on his head, and end this humiliation. He lunged for Mr. Y's legs. The moment Rhys's hands made contact, it was over. Mr. Y didn't try to sprawl. He didn't try to fight the takedown. He yielded to it. As Rhys drove forward, Mr. Y melted with the force, simultaneously placing one slipper-clad foot behind Rhys's ankle and pushing, gently, on Rhys's hip. It wasn't a throw. It wasn't a trip. It was a redirection of balance. Rhys, propelled by his own massive forward-driving force, and with his ankle now blocked, had nowhere to go but down. He didn't just fall. He tumbled. He went head over heels, a complete, ungraceful somersault, and crashed onto his back with a sound that shook the ring. THWUMP. The entire gym went silent. You could hear a bead of sweat drop. Rhys lay there stunned, the wind knocked out of him. Mr. Y was standing in the exact same spot, hands still clasped behind his back. He looked down at Rhys with that same sad, pitying smile. Rhys, in a primal, humiliating rage, scrambled to his feet. He was done. No more moves. He cocked his right hand, his rhino horn, the punch that had ended 12 professional fights. He was going to take the old man's head off, bet or no bet. He threw it with every ounce of muscle he owned. Mr. Y didn't move. He just waited. At the very last microsecond, as the glove was inches from his face, Mr. Y did move. He raised one hand, just one. He didn't block the punch. He met it. His small, ancient, papery hand opened, and his palm just stuck to Rhys's wrist. It was the principle of sticking, nighin'. He didn't stop the punch. He joined it. Rhys felt something he had never felt in his life. It wasn't a block. It felt like his fist had suddenly been dipped in wet cement. All the power, all the kinetic energy just vanished. It was absorbed into the old man's body, down through his legs, and, as Rhys would later learn, into the floor. Mr. Y hadn't budged an inch. He was, as his art demanded, rooted. Rhys's arm was just stuck, held in the air by this tiny old man. He tried to pull it back. He couldn't. It was like his wrist was glued to Mr. Y's palm. Mr. Y pushed. It wasn't a hard push. It was a gentle, rolling pulse of energy, originating from his hip, not his shoulder. Rhys Jackson, the 240-pound MMA champion, was thrown backward as if he'd been hit by a car. He flew across the ring, crashed through the ropes, and tumbled out onto the ringside floor, scattering chairs and screaming spectators. He landed in a heap at Gina's feet. Clang, clang, clang. The bell rang. The 5 minutes were up. Rhys was on the floor, covered in spilled beer, his reputation in tatters. In the ring, Mr. Y nodded politely to the stunned referee. He walked to his corner. Mrs. Chun handed him his thermos. He took another sip of tea. The fight was over. Mr. Y hadn't thrown a single punch. He hadn't taken a single step backward. And he hadn't even broken a sweat. He hadn't taken a single step backward. Rhys had lost. The internet didn't just mock Rhys. It annihilated him. The headlines were merciless. Rhino's rage meets Grandpa's grace. MMA champ humiliated by 80-year-old in slippers. The biggest L in combat sports history. His sponsors dropped him by noon the next day. The Rhino's Den membership numbers plummeted. His followers? He lost 500,000 in 48 hours. The ones who stayed just posted comments like, "Do a collab with the old man." And he didn't even hit you, bro. Rhys was ruined. But more than that, he was confused. He had spent his life believing that strength was muscle, power was speed, victory was impact. What he had just experienced was none of those things. It was something else. It was a puzzle that his brain, his muscles, and his entire philosophy couldn't solve. He watched the footage over and over and over. The push. How had he done that? It looked fake. It looked like a cheap movie effect. But Rhys had felt it. He had felt the powerlessness. He didn't sleep for 2 days. Gina, after 48 hours of screaming and crying and threatening lawsuits. Against who? She wasn't sure. Finally just pointed at him. "Fix this, Rhys. I don't care how. Just fix it." On the 3rd day, at 5 a.m., Rhys Jackson drove to Willow Creek Park. He wasn't wearing his Rhino gear. He was wearing gray sweatpants, an old hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled down low. He felt ashamed. He got out of his truck and walked onto the damp grass. He was an hour early. He just stood there. At 5:58 a.m., Mr. Y arrived, carrying his small wooden stool. He didn't seem surprised to see Rhys. He just nodded, as if expecting him. "You are early," Mr. Y said. "That is good. Punctuality is a sign of respect, even if it is respect for an opponent." Rhys couldn't look him in the eye. "I'm here," he mumbled. "The bet." "A week, no cameras." "Good," Mr. Y said. He set his stool down. "We begin." Rhys clenched his fists. "All right. Show me. Show me the push. The thing you did." Show me how to fight like that. Mr. Y chuckled. Fight? Oh no. You do not know how to stand yet. How can you learn to fight? What are you talking about? I know how to stand, Rhys said, striking his aggressive fighter stance. Mr. Y walked over to him. He didn't poke him. He just touched him. His fingers, light as moths, brushed Rhys's shoulders. No, you are bracing. You are not standing. Your shoulders are shouting. Your knees are angry. Your back is rigid. You are a house of cards, waiting for a breeze. This is how I fight, Rhys insisted. This is how you fall, Mr. Y corrected him. Now, stand. For the next 2 hours, Mr. Y made Rhys stand still. He taught him Zhan Zhuang, the standing post posture. Rhys's feet were shoulder-width apart. His knees were slightly bent. His arms were held out in front of him, as if hugging a large tree. It was agony. Rhys, a man who could squat 600 pounds, a man who could flip tractor tires for an hour, couldn't hold this pose for 3 minutes. His muscles, trained for explosive, short-duration bursts, began to quiver, then burn, then scream. Sweat poured down his face. His shoulders felt like they were on fire. His back spasmed. I can't, he gasped, his arms dropping. Breathe, Mr. Y said, sipping his tea from his thermos. You are fighting yourself. Your muscle fights your bone. Your bone fights the ground. You are at war with gravity. Stop fighting. Yield to the ground. Let it hold you up. The other 6 students, Mrs. Chun included, arrived. They saw Rhys, nodded politely, and took up their own standing postures. And they stood. For an hour, unmoving, serene, their eyes were closed. They looked asleep on their feet. Rhys's week of training was the most profound torture of his life. He didn't learn a single punch. He didn't learn a kick. He didn't learn a submission. On day 2, Mr. Y made him walk. He had to walk, heel to toe, so slowly that one footstep took 30 seconds. Rhys kept toppling over. His balance, built for explosive lunges, was non-existent in this slow, controlled world. On day 3, Mr. Y introduced Tui Shou, or push hands. It was a disaster. They stood facing each other, wrists touching. Listen to me, Mr. Y instructed. Feel where I am going. Rhys's instinct was to shove. He pushed with all his might, and Mr. Y just melted. He yielded, redirected, and Rhys, pushing against nothing, pitched forward onto his face in the wet grass. Again, Rhys shoved. Mr. Y melted. Rhys fell. Again, Rhys, frustrated, tried to pull. Mr. Y followed. He didn't resist. He stuck to Rhys's arms, following the pull, and then, when Rhys was off balance from his own motion, Mr. Y just pushed, gently, and Rhys was on his back. You are too loud, Mr. Y said, shaking his head. You are shouting with your muscles. You cannot listen. You are trying to force a result. You are not feeling the opportunity. Rhys was broken. He was a 240-pound infant. Everything he knew was wrong. His strength was a liability. His speed was a weakness. His aggression was a blindfold. On the 7th and final day, Rhys showed up. He was quiet. He was humble. The Rhino was gone. There was just Rhys. He went to the standing post. He held it. He was shaking. He was sweating, but he held it for 10 minutes. He was listening to his own body. He was feeling the ground. When they finished, Rhys finally bowed. A deep, genuine bow. Mr. Y, who are you? Rhys asked, his voice raw. Were you some secret champion? A grandmaster in China? What was all that? The push? The sticking? How do you know all that? Mr. Y smiled. He was mending his simple cloth slipper, which had split at the seam. He had a small needle and thread. His hands moved with an impossible, practiced precision. A champion? Oh, goodness, no, Mr. Y chuckled. I am a tailor. Rhys blinked. A what? A tailor, Mr. Y repeated, not looking up from his needlework. I was a bespoke tailor. For 55 years. Here, in this city, my father was a tailor. His father, too. Rhys was completely lost. A tailor? That doesn't make any. How does a tailor do that? Mr. Y finished his stitch and tied a perfect, tiny knot. He looked at Rhys, his dark eyes sparkling with the twist. Rhys, he said, what do you think strength is? It's power, Rhys said. Muscle, force. No, Mr. Y said, shaking his head. That is tension. That is rigidity. It is brittle. You came to my park. You are like a cheap suit, stiff, badly made. The seams were all pulling. You hold your shoulders so tight, you are fighting your own jacket. He stood up, and for the first time, he put his hands on Rhys's shoulders, not to push him, but to feel him. For 55 years, Mr. Y whispered, his fingers moving over Rhys's traps and deltoids, I listened to men's bodies. A good tailor does not just measure. He feels. He feels where the man holds his stress. He feels how the man stands, how he breathes. Does he lean? Does he favor one side? My job was not to force the cloth to fit the man. My job was to yield the cloth, to make the cloth part of the man, to find the structure and align with it. Rhys's blood ran cold. He was realizing, Mr. Y continued, the push hands you hate so much. That is how I felt for tension in a client's back. To see if the jacket listened to his movement. The sticking, Rhys breathed. How I smoothed a stubborn lapel, Mr. Y said. You cannot force silk. You must persuade it. You must join it. You must stick to it. And the fight, Rhys said. When you threw me, Mr. Y smiled. You are a very, very badly made suit, Rhys. All your tension, all your force, it was all pulling in one direction. You were a mess. All I did was find the seam, the point of your greatest tension, and I adjusted it. You did all the work. You threw yourself. I just tailored you. Rhys Jackson, a 240-pound champion, was taken apart, humiliated, and beaten by an 80-year-old tailor. He had been taught a lesson in combat by a man who had spent his life making pants. The irony was so profound, so devastatingly perfect, that Rhys, for the first time in a decade, laughed. A real, genuine laugh. It was the laugh of a man whose entire universe had just been shattered and rebuilt as something new. And something better. Rhys Jackson didn't post on social media for 3 months. The internet assumed he'd retired in shame. Gina's calls went to voicemail. The Rhino's den was shuttered. For renovations? The truth was, Rhys was in the park. Every single morning. At 5 a.m., he wasn't there as the Rhino. He was there as Rhys. He stood. He walked. He listened. He didn't just practice with Mr. Y. He talked to him. He learned about his life. He learned about structure. He learned about yielding. He learned that true strength wasn't about imposing your will on the world. It was about understanding the world so well that the world yielded to you. After 3 months, he reopened his gym. The neon signs were gone. The chrome was gone. The music was gone. It was just a room with mats and plants. His old meathead training partners showed up, confused. Where's all the stuff? One asked. Gone, Rhys said. He was slimmer. He'd lost 30 pounds of tense muscle. He looked calm. Today, Rhys announced, we are not going to hit things. We are going to stand. 6 months later, Rhys Jackson had his comeback fight. Gina, begrudgingly, had booked him. His opponent was a new brawler, the Hammer, a man who was, essentially, a carbon copy of the old Rhys Jackson. He was all rage, all power, all noise. The bell rang. The Hammer charged across the ring, throwing bombs, and Rhys flowed. He wasn't there. He yielded. He redirected. He stuck to the hammer's arms. He used his opponent's own rage, his own tension, his own forward momentum against him. The crowd was baffled. Rhys wasn't fighting. He was dancing. He was tailoring his opponent. The hammer gassed himself out in 3 minutes, punching air, falling off balance, and getting gently pushed into the cage again and again. He was confused. He was enraged. He was loud. In the second round, Rhys changed. He stopped only yielding. Having learned balance from Mr. Y, he now blended it with his own brutal MMA training. He yielded to a wild hook, and in that same flowing motion, used his rooted stance to deliver a perfect, devastating leg kick. He stuck to a jab and used that stuck connection to transition into a lightning-fast jiu-jitsu takedown. He wasn't a brawler anymore. He wasn't a Tai Chi master. He was something new. He was water. He was silk wrapped around iron. He won the fight in the second round with a submission that looked effortless. He didn't force it. He just applied it at the exact moment his opponent was off balance. The hammer tapped before he even knew what had happened. The stadium was silent. They didn't know what they'd just seen. In the post-fight interview, the reporter was breathless. "Rhys, I don't even know what that was. That's a new style. Where did you learn that? Who's your new coach?" Rhys smiled into the camera. It wasn't the Reno sneer. It was a calm, centered smile. I just met a tailor," he said. He taught me how to listen. The story seems over. A man humbled, a lesson learned, a new path forged. We cut one last time back to Willow Creek Park. It's a year later. Mr. Y is there, as always, sipping his tea. A new arrogant young man is there. This one isn't an MMA fighter. He's a boxer. Fast, flashy. He's shadowboxing, bouncing on his toes, his expensive gloves a blur. "Hey, old man," the boxer shouts, his voice echoing. "I saw what you did to that rhino bum." He's all over TV talking about tailors and listening. What a joke. The boxer gets right in Mr. Y's face. "Teach me that voodoo, old man. Teach me that secret, that touch of death you used on him. I'll pay you." Mr. Y looks up from his stool. He gives the young man that same sad, pitying smile. "Ah," Mr. Y sighs. "Mr. Jackson, he was a good suit. He just needed adjusting. He learned his lesson." Yeah, whatever," the boxer said. "The tailoring, I get it. It's a metaphor. Now, teach me the real stuff." "The fight. Now, teach me the real stuff." "The fight." Mr. Y's smile changed. It was still serene, but the edges of it were cold. He stood up. He was still just a frail old man in slippers, but the air around him suddenly felt very heavy. "You misunderstand," Mr. Y said, his voice dropping to that same soft pebble-in-a-well tone. "The tailoring, that was for him. That was his lesson." The boxer's impatient bouncing slowed. What do you mean?" Mr. Y took a small step closer. His eyes were no longer listening. They were measuring. "You see," Mr. Y whispered, "before I was a tailor, I was a butcher." He paused. "And that is a very different kind of sensitivity to structure." The boxer stopped bouncing. He stopped breathing. Mr. Y just smiled and waited. We all talk about strength, but after hearing this, what do you think true strength really is? If you loved this story, and you want more tale of wonder that make you think, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Let us know your answer to the question in the comments below. We love reading your thoughts. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.